Assalamu alaikum and welcome everybody to the discussion today. Thank you very much for registration and joining us in. Just a little intro about ourselves for all those who are joining us in for the first time. We are SPS, Software Productivity Strategists. We are a company based out of US. We are into IT solutions and services since 1993. We started working on security in 1997. We have three major domains that we work for. One is security, that is our practice that has a complete business outlook in terms of security portfolio. We have AI and data science domain, which is a complete set of team and works in full tandem in terms of full business portfolio. We have a cloud services team. We are primarily solution builders. That is what we call them because we combine all these three, that is security, AI, and cloud, and we actually do build solutions, and we have been doing so for quite long now. SAP security, or I would say SAP is part of our application security under the security portfolio that we have been doing for quite long in the US. Mr. John Khalid Saleem, who is our speaker for today, is the SPS practice leader for SAP security and will be speaking today. So I'll not take much time and I'll hand it over to Khalid Saab to start the discussion. We'll try to keep it interactive and we'd like to hear from you in terms of your response and feedback to whatever we discuss, and we'll be open for all the questions, and you can also put your questions in the chat window and we'll keep discussing all those during our talk. So over to Khalid Saab. Khalid Saab, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Let me start with introducing myself. As Arshad mentioned, I have spent a long time working for FEDEX and Nissan. And most of my work, I started to work as an accountant at FEDEX, and then I became a systems analyst and then database analyst and so on and so forth. So most of my life has been professional life, that is, been surrounded by technology and looking into security, looking into internal controls and so forth. And then I got an early retirement from FEDEX and I started to work for Nissan. And Nissan had just implemented a security tool called Versa. So I was the manager for Versa, just that GRC and Versa. We had a lot of issues, and that's when, when you don't learn things unless you have issues. And at that time, security, Versa was a pretty new tool. It was a third party for SAP. And so my involvement in Versa was because of the issues they were having. And within GRC, as you all know, it's a pretty open field and there are a lot of, different aspects of GRC. So resolving the issues at the time, we didn't have enough tools provided by SAP to do the analysis and do the things that we needed to do. So what I did was I began to develop my own tools. I knew databases, I had access to all the tables, I knew the schemas of the databases. So I began to basically tailor my own programming skills and whatever I knew about the databases, and I began to develop my own tools to solve the question that security people had, or GRC. So over several years, I developed a whole slew of whatever. Then at the time, SAP bought Versa, and they came up with they called it GRC, SAP GRC. And so I began to realize what I had developed was really what SAP GRC was trying to do. However, my tools did it much better, and this is because I was tailoring everything according to what I needed, what the questions are being asked with the hands-on experience. When, as you know, SAP will develop everything. They are developing for a whole world. They have different customers, different needs, manufacturing, banking, and so forth. And so they try to kill everything with one bullet, and that always doesn't work. So that's how I began to understand what SAP security means, what the roles are made of, what how to resolve an issue, how to. So I got into this thing from so. Eventually, what I did was I could do everything with my own tool, even with the GRC that SAP did. And the difference was I did it, again, I'm going to say it, I did it faster and better because I knew what exactly was needed. And so that's my rant about what I did with SAP at Nissan with GRC. And so what I want to understand is really, I want to keep the discussion very interactive and open. And this is not going to be 101 on anything. Uh, what I want to do is try to understand what you guys do, what kind of uh, implementation of GRC, if you have it, you guys have, and what kind of issues, precisely what is that if you had one issue, each one of you, what would that be? What would, let's say money is no object and uh, and we are, we don't charge you anything for doing whatever you need to be done. What would be one thing that you want us to do? Or what keeps you up at night? That kind of, so with that, I want to start however you guys want to do. Let's just go one by one, introduce yourself briefly and tell me what are you're looking for from the seminar and what your needs are. What is the burning issues that keep you up at night? So, Asif, would you like to volunteer for that?
Uh, Asif sir, for some reason we cannot hear you, but if there is a problem, you can put your question in chat or comment in chat, and we can move to the other participants. You can, but there is some issue with my audio. Yeah,
Whoever
yeah, there is
wants to
some
take the
issue.
lead, that'd be
That's okay.
fine.
Yeah, yeah. This is all informal, by the way. This is all informal. You can speak whatever you want. You can share whatever you want. This is an informal session. Okay, so Asif is saying that he's only here to increase my knowledge. So thank you very much, Asif. That's perfectly fine. Mirza Sahab, would you want to say anything? कुछ भी comment करना चाहें आप कर सकते हैं. That's perfectly
Let
fine.
me, so Asif, what area you would like to know about?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Sorry, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Just because I'm on the spot, you don't have to.
Khalid Sahab, let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. I think let's continue. And of course, the participants can chip in as they feel comfortable or as they want to.
Okay, at least tell us. So this would be relevant. Uh,
Yeah.
just tell us what sort of implementation or what version of SAP you guys have. What if you have GRC implemented or not, and if you do, what version of GRC? I think those are three simple and relevant questions that if you can do that, that way I will know what really to address and what to talk about that will be useful for you. Okay. I think I got one response, and
Yeah.
so anyway.
जुबैर साहब, आप कुछ फीडबैक देना चाहें? उमैर, आप यू फ्रॉम पाक सुजुकी, आप कुछ देना चाहें? मौज साहब, आप कुछ कहना चाहें? यू आर ओपन, and if you don't want to speak, that's perfectly fine. You can put your comment in the chat. Khalid sahab, I suggest we continue, and of course we expect that we'll have comments in chat. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Um, Anyway, the way the GRC works is essentially, as you know, governance, risk, and compliance. Uh, there is a CISO who is responsible for governance, and the risk part is defined by each organization in its own way. You have to know what is that you're trying to protect. In today's world, there, um, what I'm going to say is there are two aspects to GRC. One is more like technical, real technical, where you have cybersecurity, you have cloud involved, and the things that happen outside of SAP. Then once you're within SAP, you log in, you get in there into the application. Then you have your internal issues. For example, so what we are going to address, what the GRC part that we are addressing is what is financial risk? What is data risk? Uh, each company defines their risk their own way, and if you have internal audit department, I'm sure that's what they do. So basically, the audit defines what the risks are, what the probability of going something bad is, and what is that area where the probabilities exist. And then you have compliance issues. Then how do you go about really mitigating those risks, and how you comply with on an ongoing basis? What do you do to really resolve the issues? What do you do to uh, avoid getting into really a bad situation? So within SAP, which would be more like information security. So in SAP, you have to protect your database. You have to protect your information. And, in any organization, sometimes you may not realize that some things that look pretty benign may be valuable to either competition or somebody. So really risks are all over the place, and GRC, and you have to continuously monitor what's happening in the organization, who is doing what, do they have proper authorization, do they have, you know, do they have any T codes or any access that is not uh, clean? By that I mean you cannot have SOD, separation of duties conflict. So one of the main thing SAP strives for. So the ball really starts with many times the role the organization assigns you are one thing, and you're actually, you know, many times in your job or in your assignment or roles, you may have things that are conflicting from financial point of view. I think where the rubber meets the road is the money and the dollars and the finance. So that's one of the things that you have to really, within SAP, if you're working on, mostly if you have the financials, then you have to cover all SOD issues. So knowing how many roles you have. And first thing what you do is, if you have GRC, um, you have to run your SOD reports, separation of duties, conflicts. One of the main things that you start with, let's say you start a project that you will start, I'm going to go over user appropriateness, that you want to make sure that users have the right access. Uh, and you can do that by several different ways. One is you take an inventory of your user roles and begin to look, do the users have just wide access? I mean, can they do everything? So you want to, you know, the requirement from any auditor would be to make sure that they have access that they need. You shouldn't be having somebody who can pay the bills, who can generate invoices and pay them, create vendors, and the common sense landscape that you have to based on the accounting practices what the red areas are, where the separation of duties conflicts exist. So you take the inventory of your roles and users, and you begin to isolate if their access is proper. And so that then you look at the authorization checks. You look at the information. Uh, you basically gather information within the organization. Do you have a problem if one department had shares, or they can look at the other departments' financials, for example? Or what can they look at? Can you look at each other's budget and so forth? So all these requirements, they are necessary to make appropriate roles. So in many companies, it happens all the time. There are not enough people. GRC comes with recommended roles and a rule book where, based on the common practice or best practices of accounting, they have created these roles that are SOD free. However, in the organization, when people, you do not have enough people where you can maintain that sanctity of duties or separation of duties. Uh, you end up with people who have roles that are actually conflicting with each other. So that's when the GRC comes in. That's where the rule book comes in. So there are several things that you have to do to implement GRC or something to that effect. So there are two types of services that we provide. One is if somebody does not have GRC implemented and they want to implement that, that's where SPS can help you implement. We can take inventory of your users, we can take inventory of your roles and what duties people need to perform, and we can help you design a system that where you have conflict-free roles. And once we do that, we run what you call is SOD's check. You're still going to have, no matter what, you are still going to have some separation of duties conflicts. Then the question is, how do you mitigate those conflicts? In some cases, you may have to set up. Normally, what happens is you agree that you're going to have some of these conflicts, depending how serious they are, and then you create mitigating controls. And mitigating control means whenever you catch the conflicts, you you associate people with the mitigating control. In other words, so and so is going to do something. Whenever they do use that access, it's going to create an SOD. So you understand the risk and you define a control, which is mitigating control, and you begin to park that person's access in that mitigating control. Then you assign somebody who is going to monitor that, access. Anytime you use those T codes, Uh, so that also implies that you are looking at the usage. You basically determine which T codes you want to monitor. You look at the logs. So, you want to make sure at the beginning of the project that your logs are turned on. You have to have, for those who are, you know, in IT and they represent, GRC teams, the logs are important. Logs are, you have to turn the right logs on. Uh, Many time it happens, I have seen people, logs disappear or they're not turned on and so forth. So once you do the logs, then you collect the data from the logs. And so basically most of your work is access control. Within the access control, you have to see, uh, you collect your SODs, you make sure there's an access control and there's a process control. Over what happens is within access control, you start with you implement a project, you implement your security, and you think you started with a clean slate. But then when people move, you have to have process to reflect that change within your security landscape. In your user, you want to make sure they do not have the role that they had in their previous jobs, and they need to get a new role. So these are some of the things that process control does, that you follow, you have periodic reviews of people access, and you want to make sure that when they change role, are they in their current job or not? If they're not, then you begin to, you have to make sure that you inactivate the role they don't need and activate the one they do, because you're sitting with conflicts. And so that's where you have to monitor continuously different tables, different. One other aspect that you have to keep in mind is if you are active develop, company that develops a lot of new projects, a lot of new T code, or you are changing or uh, you are defining new T codes, for example, adding new authorization objects, changing roles and things of that nature, then you want to make sure they are reflected in your rulebook. If you add a new authorization object or you modify an existing role, to put that object in, you have to reflect the same in your rule books also. So, and rule book is again one of the areas that is very extensive, millions of rows of data, depending, that's one thing. That's why I try to engage where you guys can share that information. So, we know the depth of what your landscape looks like. But anyway, uh, then you have to also make sure within the process control, now that you're running along, you're making changes in one system, and maybe there's uh, your quality system does not reflect everything that is in your production system. So you have to bring those in sync, and your test system and so forth. If you create any instance, they have to be synchronized so you have the same set of rules apply to all your landscape. And then one of the areas that people have issues, or I have found the bandwidth. You know, the things are so fluid these days. The risks are changing, and you have your audit as they catch up with those risks. they want to come back to you and they ask you questions and you have to run reports. So one of the things that we can help you with is if you have audit issues, we can help you resolve that. We can look at your policy and procedures, and we can, make sure that they reflect what the risks are. And so essentially, uh, what we have done is, uh, let me see if I can share one of the screen that gives you a taste of what the tool that we have. So as I was, I alluded to the process that I developed and the thing that over the years that I have developed my own tool. So for those who do not have GRC implemented, because GRC could be expensive, um, depending on how many users you have. You have user licenses you have to pay annually, and you have to implement, you have to hire people, you have to train them. So there's a big cost involved. So if for the for those of you who do not have GRC implemented, this is the tool that SPS can provide you. Uh, we are not selling the tool, but this is just to show you what different things for those who are experts, maybe they will understand. So basically, this happened over a long time. So there's the early watch report, where this is like audit of at any given time. This report will show you what the issues may be or what questions to ask, where you have critical people. Sometimes you open an RFC connection and never closed it, or some of your standard system IDs, they are open, and so on and so forth. So this report looks at, I'm not going to go over every one of these, but this is the kind of things that we can do. For example, this first SOD analysis, that report, it, basically it takes the SODs for each user, and if you had to mitigate them, or if you have to talk to the managers who own these SOD conflicts, um, it will show you which T codes are causing the SOD conflict and how many times the person has used those T codes. And then depending on, this is again, this is sort of an objective thing that you do. You sit down with the user or the manager and you look at their usage. If somebody is using one T code 100 times a month, and there's another T code that causes the conflict, they only use it once a month. Maybe that T code could be given to them in a firefighter or emergency access, which will alleviate the conflict. So this is kind of that. Then this is next screen right here is mitigated control dashboard. It shows you all the users that are associated with the mitigated control, which area they belong to, um, and when was the last time they used a T code and so forth. So all these, basically this is mitigation of SOD area. Then users and T codes, what T codes any user has at any given time. Then you can explore the GRC rulebook, uh, custom T codes and roles. Uh, if you just needed to know what are the custom T code and which roles are they being used in. So this would be that report. Users for a T code. How many users, a lot of this stuff is available in GRC. So like I said, if you don't have GRC implemented, these are the tools that we use and we provide, and then we can help you resolve all these issues. Then usage for a user. This is, I'm just picking up these things at random. Like you can give one user, I'm sorry, this is not connected. Otherwise, I could have shown the database, but I wasn't expecting. That would take a while. Maybe that's the next meeting. We can explore all this. I am available to do that. Like this is a particular user, which T code they are using over the last 6 months, how many times they used. And this is the user, then usage for a T code. If you have a T code, the audit may find an issue with, you can look at the usage, who is using it, for how many times they used it over the last 6 months or a year, whatever. 6 months is, I'm using that because usage is pretty extensive, big database issue. So 6 months is pretty good indication if you want to look at something that's probably the appropriate way. 6 months should give you enough idea of what you need to do. Then within different conflicts, roles for a list of users. If you have a list of users, you can provide that. Just drop it in or put it in a spreadsheet. You can run that, and it gives you which roles are assigned to each one of those users. And if you guys see something that you have a question about within this menu, each one of these boxes represents an app or a program or an actionable item. Critical basis T code. A lot of companies, one of the auditors' favorite question is, do you have a list of critical T codes? Usually you define that, each organization does that over the years, and this is just a quick list of that. Sensitive T codes, sensitive T codes for bases, data management, and just a slew of things that we can do. Anyway, let's, is anything that interests you guys in this?
Khalid, we have a question here from one of the participants, Sayyid Junaid Hussain. And he says, I have a question. When we assign T codes, they are assigned to specific authorization roles. Is it necessary to enable logs in SAP and configure with SEAM solution for creating new records, modifying, deleting, etc.? Further, when users are given access to authorization roles, the SOD helps us to identify what duties they can perform. Then what's the point of enabling logs?
Do you
Junaid,
understand?
if you could speak, if you could speak, Junaid, that would be fantastic because that will be more in terms of understandable and interactive.
All right. So my question is that when we assign the T codes, to the specific authorization roles, for example, there's a company where there's an authorization roles of finance, salesperson, whatever the role has been defined there. If we enable logs, it will require some cost. And when you define the SOD, when you document it, that these are like 4 people, who will perform these actions. And what's the point of enabling logs and, configuring it with the SEAM? Because we know that these 4 persons will perform that specific duties. So my point is why we want to, put an extra mile, for configuring logs at this stage.
Let's say I'm going to play the auditor. I'm going to say that you guys change roles every 2 weeks, and then you change them back.
It depends. It depends.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if the auditors come in and they ask a question, they pick 5 users. They say, prove us that they did what you told us they're doing. How would you do that?
All right. So it means that you need to enable auditing logs, for this specific.
Absolutely. Without the logs, you have nothing. If really, if auditors catch you without the logs, again, I'm not speaking for your practice particularly. If I get caught without the logs here in the US, I mean, you're saying I'm going to erase my footprints because I'm so good that we don't do anything wrong. That's a good argument.
Mohammed, what if there's a small size company and there's only one person who's been assigned that T code? So is it still necessary to enable logs over there, or we can just document that this is the only user who is performing this specific task?
So if I was to ask you, can you prove that that person is the only one who is using that T code?
That's what I'm asking you. It depends on the scale of the business. Like there's a small size company and they have only one person in that particular role. So is it still necessary to enable logs in that case?
I can't find any reason for not to turn on the logs, because you're protecting yourself. That would be, I mean, you got to have some audit trail. I'm trained as a controls person. I'm sorry. I would say turn on the logs. Do you have space issues? Unless you have serious, I mean, your system goes down because you turn on the logs. That may be the only reason I can think of.
Sometimes, the performance issues, arises, but definitely, from your perspective, you are saying that to prove a record, in the previous time, the auditing
Right.
needs to be enabled.
Here's an example. I have known people. We had a lot of people subcontracted in India, for example. Okay, so they were sharing IDs. So one person logged in from one city, and at the same time, 5 minutes later, he's logging in from another city. If I didn't have the logs, how would I know?
True that. That's why the information security plays a very vital role. When employees are abusing it at this level, it would be hard to caught them.
Exactly. So the point is, yeah, the logs are, without logs, you have no security. How do you know which tables they looked at? It's not only the dollars and cents. A lot of companies go bankrupt because people know who their customers are, or who their vendors are, who their suppliers are. If somebody, I'm just bringing out the data is important also. So, and that's what, defining the risk is it's an art. What could be the risk? If everything is running good and you don't have any logs and you don't have any issues, you're lucky. But basically GRC and the access control, it's an insurance. That's why I think a lot of companies, or I'm not going to say a lot of companies, a lot of people tend to undermine this. They think, it's like if your car insurance is expired, you say, well, oh yeah, I'll get it. I'm just going to the market. Yeah, you may not have any issues for 6 months. But if it does happen and you're driving a Mercedes that costs $300,000, then you're in a problem. So it's a fine art. The best thing is to have the minimum insurance, which is your logs, that if you had to go back. I had issues where people, uh, you know, I was in a meeting one time, again, and a senior VP walks in the meeting room and he is just about to go bazooka because somebody looked at his financial statement of his area and started asking him some questions from Japan. He goes, how the hell he looked at my information? Why did they have access? So again, so we were able to find out who the person was. We knew who went into what table, all because of the logs. Again, I may have overkilled it, but that's what the importance of logs is. See if you can see some of these, for example, usage for a user. I wouldn't know unless this is where I'm getting the information from the logs, right? So anyway, let's just move on. So basically these are this screen that I'm showing you. It pretty much covers everything within access control, the process control. Access control and process control are pretty much, they complement each other. You have access control that basically is the front end. And then the process control is sort of back end, what changes have been made, and it's a review process. All your tables are in sync or not, and so forth. The thing is, the object is, we don't need, I don't know you guys, and you probably don't know me as well either. And so this is where I want to find out. I mean, this was a good question. And again, I hope I gave you an answer that is valuable. So I know the performance is an issue, but there are minimal logs. Maybe work with your IT guys, or if you are the IT guy, turn on something that tells you somebody logged into this T code. You can tune the SM19, that's the T code they use to turn on the log, and you can basically configure it. So anyway, here's, I want to summarize this issue by GRC. By turning it on, you're really buying insurance. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. GRC is all about, it's an area people, it's not glamorous, but that's where, you have to protect your assets. You have to protect your information. You have to protect your financial, you have to protect your manufacturing information. So it's a repetitive process. You continuously monitoring what's being done, who are the people leaving the company, have their ID been deleted? Do they still have access? If you open access to SAP consultant from outside, did they ever close that? All these things are checks and balances that you protect your data. There's payroll information. There is in health industry, there's a lot of health information, which is really, so you protect your tables, who can look at which table, and so on and so forth. So anyway, if you don't have GRC, then we have a solution that's on the screen. We run these things for you, and we are not looking for huge project. If you want to implement GRC from scratch, we can do that. We'll help you do that. We can use your expertise, and we can lend our expertise, and we can put the project together. That will be one thing. And if you have questions, if you have smaller issues, we can, we can go down to that level that we can say, okay, this will cost you 10 hours, and we can provide those services. And so the idea is that we have security under control. If you have issues, that you talk to us, and we are here to really tell you what we can do, and we can do it as good or as better than what SAP could do. That's I'm not really ashamed to say that. I hope there's no SAP guy in the room, but we can do it better. So with that, if you have any specific questions, please ask and I can answer those. Otherwise, Arshad, would you like to just take over, or you want to finish?
So to all the participants, actually, I just like to make one statement. If you have any questions or you think like you should talk to us or we should talk to you, please let us know the problems that you want us to consult for. Trust me, consultation is absolutely free, and even if you go beyond that, you will find that very easy. So if you want to engage in a one-to-one session because of confidentiality and other things, we can do that. We are available. Just let me know, and we can schedule all these discussions. Plus, if you want us to have a discussion, any generic issue which could help anybody else as well. For example, if you want to schedule another webinar or another session or sessions in future based upon the discussion today or any of the subjects that we can see on screen now, just let us know and we'll do that. So for now, I'll give it back to the participants to ask any questions or make any comment, whatever you want to do.
I have one comment before we do that.
Sure.
Please feel free to take a screenshot of this menu that I have. And I'm asking the participants, let them have this. So if they think of something, this is kind of a, if you will, this is the way we are offering services and things. If this raises a question, you can call us, contact us, and go from there. And also, if you want to have a one-on-one meeting with us, you have a specific issue, you want to explore that, talk to us, that'd be fine too. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you, Khalid. So we would welcome any questions. We still have like 5 minutes left. So we'd like to hear from you. So forum is open for you.
I just want to thank everyone who was listening. And like we said, please feel free to reach Arshad. He can reach me. And if you want to, if you want to ask any question, it's not going to cost anything. So we want to make friends. We want to make customers, and we want to offer a genuine service.
Yeah, I think we don't have any questions for now. So thank you very much to all the participants to join us in today. Thank you for your time, and we'll look forward to hear from you.